Nigeria, our men and women are prevented from carrying on with their daily hustle to work out a living in order to provide for their families. Now, we are told that the reason is to secure the release of Nnamdi Kanu, even when the man himself disapproves of this method and warned of the futility of punishing our people and crippling our economy for the sin of the federal government of Nigeria. Ndị Igbo wee na-ajụ si, ọ na-abụ nkịta rie nsị ezere ewu. But make no mistake about this. The fact of the matter is that our region has been totally under the control of thugs and power-hungry mongrels. The action has nothing to do with Nnamdi Kanu. Rather, it's about a naked power grab. Now, I hate to tell you, but these people will not stop on their own, even when Nnamdi Kanu eventually gets released. They will find another reason to intimidate us, to lock us up, to kill us, because that's how criminals operate. And I hope and pray that I'll be proven wrong in this. Now, the person we have today is Professor Chidi Odinkalu. Chidi is uniquely positioned to take on this issue because he comes from a position of being a victim. His hometown is actually one of the epicenters of this Biafran separatist movement. And on the other hand, he's also a big part of the solution, that we're trying to take care of this issue. So before we go on to introduce the guest speaker today, let me call on my co-host, Dr. Chidi, to give us some housekeeping here, the housekeeping rules. Thank you very much. Chidi, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Osman, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Professor Chidi, we warmly welcome you once again. This is the Kinga monthly town hall meeting, which we hold every last Thursday of the month. The chief host, please mute the music, the background music, please. Kinga monthly town hall meeting, which will welcome you to the Thursday edition of one of the signature activities of Ikenga Media and Cultural Awareness Initiative, IMCAI, which is the parent body of both Ikengaonline and a couple of other projects we are doing under the banner of IMCAI. We started Ikengaonline, the newspaper, a little over a year ago, and it's been attracting quite some attention. The idea emanated from the need to address the concerns, some of which Dr. Osman has mentioned, focusing on the Southeast and some part of the South-South, giving voice to the people and their issues. For those of us who are interested in the activities of the media, we often hear of the expression, the Lagos-Ibadan, and you might want to add Abuja nexus of the media, which hardly reports the things that go on in the southeast part of the country, and when they do, from a very jaundiced point of view. So the idea behind the Kinga was to give expression to the voice of the people in the southeast and also some of the issues that concern them. So we're happy to welcome you once again. We thank the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism that is midwifing this project in terms of support on behalf of the Makato Foundation. We would get back in terms of the other what we need to know about this process. We asked that we keep microphones muted for the duration of the program. We will open the floor after the moderators must have asked a couple of questions. We open the floor to participants. And we want to make this as interactive as possible. Once again, welcome and over to Oxman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidi, for that brief introduction. Now, Chidi Odinkalu was born into the family of Augustine and Antonio Odinkalu, both of whom were teachers. He hails from Osu in present-day Imo State. Even though he was born in Ihiala and grew up around the place that has now become the epicenter of the current Biafran separatist movement. He went to Federal Government College Okigwe for his secondary education, from where he proceeded into the Imo State University, where he backed LLB in law in 1987, and a year after, he was called to the Nigerian bar. He obtained a master's degree in law at the University of Lagos in 1990, but today he holds a PhD in law with a focus on continental institutions and economic laws from the London School of Economics. He has a lot of fellowship in his bag, including the fellowship at SOAS, Institute of Advanced Legal Studies in London, Brandeis Uni, Waterham in Massachusetts, United States of America, USIA Fellowship on the bicentennial of the Bill of Rights, and the Chevening Scholars that he got in 1992. He's held many academic positions, including currently the Professor of Practice, Tufts University, Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. He also co-director of the LLM program. But he has more than a ton of non-academic positions he's held, including the Chair Board of Directors, International Refugees Right Initiative, IRR, in Kampala, Uganda. He's the chair of the International Advisory Board, Global Rights, Nigeria, where he's the co-chair. Also of the Sudan Consortium in Kampala. He's a member of board of Atrocities Watch Africa, Kampala, Uganda. He's a member of the International Advisory Board, Physician of Human Rights in New York, United States. A member of the Advisory Board, Health and Human Rights, Boston, Massachusetts, United States. And currently is the Chair, Justice and Peace Commission, OCA, Nigeria. And we have to recall the chairman of the Nigeria National Human Rights Commission, and served on the panel of eminent persons that negotiated the return of the Gambia to the Commonwealth in 2017. I could go on, but I guess you guys got the point. He also had a lot of publications under his belt, some of which he did personally, some he co-authored with others, including the Building Bridges for Rights, Inter-Africa Initiative in the Field of Human Rights, published in 2001. Also, there's one called Justice Denied, Area Courts in Northern States of Nigeria, 1992. Then Behind the Walls, which is prison conditions in Nigeria and the Nigerian prison system in 1991. He also wrote a couple of books, including the one that is called Too Good to Die, Third Term and the Myth of Indispensable Man in Africa, which he co-authored with one of my favorites, Aisha Osori. This one has generated a lot of buzz in the media in and outside of Nigeria. Please join me to welcome a human rights activist, a scholar, a writer, academic, a professor of law, public intellectual, a rancouteur. Please welcome Professor Chidi Odinkalu. You're welcome, Prof.
Thank you, my brother. Osi. I hope everybody is well. And congratulations, everyone. We now have a cabinet we like to say very eminent Nigerians. So there we go. All our problems are sorted. So we can now deal with the detritus, kind of. I should apologize. I seem to have, my love affair with my laptop seems to have gone sour this evening. So I'm on a handheld. And if you don't hear me very well, that may be the reason. Or if your images are fuzzy, or the feed you get is depixelated, please. I should apologize in advance. But then again, we're Nigerians and we're used to these digital dysfunctions. I should also extend my thanks to Ikengaonline and the team led by OC and Chido and also Uche Ubaja for having me on this. I see the list of those who have preceded me on this, and they are truly quite weighty in a way that I couldn't possibly lay any claims to. That also means, therefore, that I can come in with a bit of a plea for mitigation, that as a small boy, so, you know, so please put that anything that I'm unable to do down to the fact now, and that's just the way it is. The subject matter, though, is a very important one and is a very live one. It's one in respect of which lots of epithets are traded these days in the Nigerian public sphere of all sorts. You know, you can't discuss the Southeast with sanity. And so I very much appreciate the opportunity for us to at least engage with it in a form of, with deliberation and a modicum of sanity. What I propose to do is to lay out quite firstly a set of ideas, tentative ideas, like the beacons to map our direction, and then we can get into the conversation. Quite clearly, it's not just that the Southeast is abuzz and is on everybody's lips politically, economically, as a security proposition, and indeed as a coexistence proposition. It is also that the issues are very live. No one who comes from the region can pretend to be unaware of what is going on. That said, however, the question exactly is what is going on. Everyone in the representations that at least I'm familiar with, and I suspect most people are familiar with, the Southeast security problem is one, recent, and two, a single issue, and that issue is IPOB, or you can hyphenate it and say IPOB ESN. And that representation has, of course, is the front end. The back end of that is essentially, therefore, that the Southeast security problem is one that goes to the very essence of Nigeria's territorial integrity, because by representing it as IPOB-BSN, it therefore becomes a question of secession for those at one end, or for those who want to be somewhat anodyne about it, they call it separatism. And representing it as that means that it is, because it is one relating to the territorial integrity of Nigeria, it primarily is a problem for the armed forces. And making it a problem of the armed forces, therefore, means that it is one, because the army is essentially a blunt instrument. It therefore is a problem of military kinetics. That's the logic of how we are where we are. Now, I think it's, I accept the premise that the Southeast, or I want to start from the premise, first of all, that the Southeast represents a complex security theater or a complex insecurity proposition. Because it's complex, the first thing is to try and do a diagnostic and actually come to a minimal understanding of the theater and of how we have ended up here. And so that's where I want to begin. And meaning that, I mean, the fact that it's complex, I don't want to go into I don't want to therefore go into a personal analysis here, because I don't think we have that luxury. And in any case, I don't think this is a theater for it. But I acknowledge that there is a political dimension to this. There is an economic dimension. There are social and livelihood dimensions. There is an environmental and demographic dimension to the situation in the Southeast. And all of that has an intertemporal horizon. You know, it unfolds over a time horizon that is not always reflected in the conversations that we have. Now, The intertemporal horizon in particular, I don't want to go back to the Civil War, but I want to suggest that since 1999, the Southeast security problem has been one continuum that has ramified over the 24th quarter of a century, essentially. That it has ramified and complexified in a way that the contemporary or current representations do not at all account for. And what exactly do I mean by this? I want to suggest that there have been about 5 phases, not one, that have brought us to this point. And I start with the Bakassi phase, which was in the immediate aftermath of the transition to civil rule. Thereafter, we had the Masab phase. Now, after the Masab phase, we had the IPOB phase, which, broadly speaking, coincides with the 2014-2015 elections, the transition that led to the Buhari administration. Now, and then up to that point, I think the developments had a logic to them. The spike that we have witnessed recently, I would suggest, is accounted for by 3 other factors or 3 other developments which fit into this time capsule. One is the outcome of the Imo State, the Supreme Court judgment in Imo State in January 2020, followed swiftly by NSAS in October 2020, and subsequently by the Owerri prison break. And this cascade of 3 events, largely which look unrelated, NSAS being a moment that was not necessarily Southeast specific, but it had its own Southeast dimensions, that these latter 3, which built on the foundations led by the earlier 3, have led us to where we are. That until the Supreme Court decision in Imo State, there was a slow burn to what was happening in the Southeast. Thereafter, things took a very sharp turn. And that sharp turn, we saw the first manifestation in the NSAS crisis. With NSAS, I would like to suggest deepen things in a way that I don't think anybody was prepared for, but the landscape was already there. And then thereafter, we end up with where we are now, following the Owerri prison break, which I want to suggest was deliberate and had political engineering to it. Now, but I want to, before I try to wind down this segment, I want to pose one question, because it's essential to getting the diagnostics right, which is this: did we have a security or insecurity crisis in the Southeast before this current manifestation of IPOB-BSN? And the second question would be, if you took out IPOB-BSN from the Southeast now, does anyone think that the security situation would necessarily end? I will start with the second question and say no. That if you actually took out the IPOB-BSN now if you lanced them from the equation, our insecurity situation will not end right now. And however, there is a dimension to the situation that is accounted for by IPOB-BSN, which is that by having it as it is now, the situation is a military situation. So the focus really is on tactical response, the tactical options available and the kinetic options available. If you removed IPOB-BSN, it will not necessarily anymore be that, because Nigeria's territorial integrity will probably not be at stake in the way that it is now, but it will probably be more intractable. And that really is the point that's the suggestion I want to make, and the suggestion that should have all of us awake. Because IPOB-BSN is represented as a matter of agitation. which, however, has been appropriated by organized crime. And I mean organized crime in every sense of, I say that with every sense of responsibility, that is multidimensional in its manifestations and presents us in the Southeast with, if you removed IPOB, it will become a law enforcement problem that law enforcement in Nigeria does not have the capability to address. What are the elements of this organized crime proposition? One, there is a political dimension to it. Politicians have been irresponsible in the use they've made of power, but it's not just that. There are exceptions, of course, so I don't want to generalize. But many politicians in a lot of locations have deployed arms into the situation for purposes of capturing power, and also traded in drugs and used drugs and arms for these purposes, which they have been unable to retrieve. And I could give you examples, but because of the nature of the medium, I don't want to do that. But quite clearly, politicians have deployed guns. Some of the guns have come from the region, and there is also a very solid and very well-established gun manufacturing industry in the Southeast, and a very resilient one as well. But some of the guns have also come from outside the region, including guns run through the Lower River Niger inland waterway, and also guns from trade in involving other parts of Nigeria, including the South-South, and militants have also been brought in from the South-South. So that's one. This means also that therefore there is a governance, a macro governance context in which all of this unfolds. And that is that a lot of the politics of the Southeast up until this time, from 1999, has itself not been accountable, nor has it delivered essential public goods to the people. Well, these are not just the elements of the collaboration between politics and this situation. And I've mentioned, therefore, the third, which is gun running, and an internal market in small arms and light weapons. But the fourth is drugs. And there is a huge drug market involved in this in a lot of locations in the Southeast. And that drug market has externalities to it, including the diaspora. And that drug market uses guns for its operations. But there is a fifth, which is cults. And the cults are in collaboration with the gun running and the drug dealing. And the cults, and I say this again with considerable sense of responsibility, but the most sophisticated cults in the country are now in the Southeast. You do have an extension of dimensions of cults from the South-South. So Debam, for instance, and Daywell, which originally started in the Niger Delta, are now found in parts of the crisis in Imo State, in Ejemekuru, Izombe, Oguta, Ohaji, Ebema. You have them there. And that is just a matter of contiguity. And the context of natural resources exploitation and crisis just makes that very natural there. But it extends beyond that. So the Buccaneers, AEA, you name them, all of them, Vikings, just name any cult that now we're actually doing at the commission in Anambra, we are doing a taxonomy, a full taxonomy of all the cults that we have come in contact with and trying to compare with cults that are present in other parts of the country. At the moment, we have it on the authority of all of the official security agencies. This is the most sophisticated network of cults in the country, bar none. And the cults are very murderous. So if you were to go, for instance, in Anambra Central, where actually IPOB cannot survive, there are lots of killings. I mean, over the past month in Oka, 2 days ago, there were killings in Oka. Now, over the past 3 weeks, killings in Oka have been going on at a dime a dozen. In one particular week, I think 3 weeks ago, they were killing like at least 2, 3 every day, right? Now, those were not IPOB killings. They were cult-based killings. And in Oka at the moment, or if you go to, say, the Demilis, particularly Demili North, it is every day. And the people being buried are young men and young people generally. And all of this is intercult crisis. Now, so the cults and the guns and the drugs have a close relationship with one another. But it's not just that. And there are a lot of people who know what Egani means. It is the informal rustling of revenue from land and all of that. Now, the Egani with cults and gangs and guns go together. And it's no accident that the places where, so if you're looking at, say, parts of Oka or parts of Idemili, where you have a land, because the Southeast has a land hunger problem, which is partly also a reflection of its demographic pressures. When you marry those two, land becomes a major issue, and people are extorting money off of people using land and or on land and using violence to enforce it. And the violence is very murderous. And that violence can also be seasonal. And so they use it for land and they use it for political purposes. But that's not all. You then have the Igwe community governance crises. Igwe, PG, Ndi youth with Egani, because Egani is used to support Igwe, na PG, na youth leader. And across the board, it has become very terrible. And all of these people enlist guns. If you looked at, in Izombe, for instance, in the Uguta axis, Ndigwe have gone missing. Ndigwe have been killed. In Anambra, about 6 PGs or 7 at the last count, just my own off the top of my head count, have been killed. Ndigwe have been killed. Ndi youth disappeared, clobbered to death. Why? Egani with this violence. And so when people tell you, oh, Ndi IPOB, you see, they said, if you, just to give you one example, Obaru, the US, the attack on the US people, staff, the story was secessionist, Mekwazo. But anybody who knows Obaru will know that it is unlikely to have been an IPOB issue. And this is not to, I'll round off with an acknowledgement of the political geography of IPOB. But anybody who knows Obaru will know that that attack on assets of the Nigerian law enforcement infrastructure was unlikely to be IPOB. It was more likely to be the organized crime who saw police and wanted to deal with them. Now, and so we are now in a region in which law enforcement is very fragile and lacking in the confidence to deploy for the purpose of protecting the people. And most of the people who are putting them to this risk are, quite frankly, organized crime, which makes this actually more dangerous, not less dangerous than IPOB. And this is the point I want to drive home, that what we have is probably actually a lot more dangerous and a lot more sophisticated than the tactical capabilities of IPOB can account for. Then, in addition to this, I want to add the natural resources dimension, which we don't reflect. But Anambra North is not IPOB, it is natural resources. Aguleri and Umuleri is the most intractable site of mass killing in the Southeast, and it has been there for over a century. Eza and Eziulo in Ebonyi State is natural resources, it is land and identity. But all of that now is lost in the narrative of IPOB. If you go to Uguta, Uguta is a mix of natural resources and politics, because that is also the place where you win elections in Imo State. Anambra North, Anam, Omambala, and all those places is the place where you win elections in Anambra State with the Idemili North. It's no accident that those places produce the highest number of killings that are not accounted for, because people don't want to deal with that reality because it does not fit the single narrative of IPOB. And so when you fit all of this in, where then is IPOB? That's the note on which I end this introduction. IPOB, the IPOB architecture is around the Orasi River basin, the floodplains of Orasi River. Orasi River begins in Dikanafai in Imo State. Dikanafai is on the border between Imo and Anambra states on a massive kidnap corridor that proceeds from Oga, linking up the OAU parts of Anambra State, Anambra South generally, with Imo West, And that is the corridor of IPOB. As we, at this IPOB Newe Wikita, that is what? Imo West, that's Olu Senatorial Zone, Anambra South, OAU with Newe South, plus Ihiala, and that includes Osumogu, Lilu, and all of that, with Osu, Olu, up to Isochi, Umulolo. That is actually the floodplains of Orasi River. I will explain if we get to that. It's not difficult to understand why Orasi River provides the axis where this is happening. But I want to stop here and yield up so that we can have a conversation.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that wonderful insights to the crisis in the Southeast and why we are where we are. Osman, you have any questions?
Yeah. I mean, I'll keep it short. So, I think last month, but thank you, Prof, for that very incisive presentation. I think you've thrown a lot of light into what looks like an opaque situation. Now, there was, I know I'm privy to one article you wrote last month. If I have to paraphrase, it has to do with what you called the legend, like the truth and legend regarding insecurity in the Southeast. And you made mention of Obosi. Obosi is a town within the Onitsha metropolitan area, for those who may not know. And I think you alluded to something like about 100 youths been killed. I think it was sometime last year, yet people don't pay much attention to that because it doesn't fit into the IPOB narrative. Now, so that data was jarring. And for me, it for two reasons, it's of significance. One is that whatever happens in Obosi, for sure, will trickle down to other places in the Southeast because, we don't have like this border that, people can't cross. So basically, gun violence in Obosi in one way or the other might get to the guy in Enugu. Then the second of all is the fact that the state, which is Anambra State, where all these things is happening. I mean, there's insecurity everywhere, but the kind of dimension we see in Anambra State is out of this world. And like you pointed out, it's not something that just started today, even before it predates the IPOB ESN. And for me, I mean, knowing the position of Anambra State in Igbo land, and in Nigeria, I would say, I mean, we're talking about the people with the highest number of billionaires per square meter of space. They have all the most educated population, the most financially, economically empowered. Yet, they are unable to solve the most fundamental problem, that is almost, existential at this point. So for me, it's just a microcosm of the big problem of the Igbo people. We have all these things. We are respected for our, industry and all those things. Yet Igbos cannot just come together and address the most fundamental problem that is, trying to, wipe them out of the face of this earth. So what is your take? I know you've, by virtue of your position, you got to meet even the Anambra State governor and a whole lot of other of these big people. Why is it? What is it? Because I'm 100% I'm 100% convinced that it's not that they don't have money to do this. Why is it that we as a people, starting from what is going on in Anambra, why can't we come together and try to address these things, just like the Yorubas have done with their Motekun and all those things? What is the problem? Thank you.
Well, I wish I had a magic bullet. I also see a question on the chat asking why the governors of the Southeast are not in on this. I'm sure they can answer for themselves, but I am actually I've met with one of them today. Over the next 48 hours, I'm likely to meet with most of the governors in the Southeast. And I've had some conversations, at least, that assure me that in their respective ways, they find this challenging, at least, and they're trying to exact some thinking about this. That said, it's also the case that we do have governorship elections in Imo State in November, and I think at the moment the priority of the governor of Imo State is to get re-elected or to get back into office after the elections in November. However he does that, I don't think he would care a whole lot about. This is my assessment. Others may think differently, but if that assessment is anywhere close to accurate, it means that we are likely to still continue in some form to have this challenge until at least after the elections in Imo State in November. That's probably when we can begin to look to aggregate critical mass of political leadership. There are things, obviously, that it's a little more difficult to say on a medium like this. You don't know who's listening. But that actually is a central part of why it's difficult to address this. The political calendar, I think, is part of it. The political investment in some of this violence is also part of it. Now, we have ended up in a situation in which some states have militias. So in at least 2 states in the Southeast, Ibubagu, which was supposed to be part of the problem, has become part of the solution. Sorry, which was supposed to be part of the solution, has become part of the problem. And Ibubagu is now implicated in a lot of atrocities that are, quite frankly, unspeakable. And they're being used, and they've been used for political enforcement. And so just having a consensus amongst the political leadership of the Southeast that this requires leadership at a level that cannot be politicized in a partisan way has become difficult. You know, a particular governor in the Southeast made his brother the Ibubagu commander, and in so doing alienated others. Another governor converted them into his personal political enforcers, liquidating or attacking his perceived political enemies, whether real or imagined. All of those things, I think, have contributed to this situation. You also do have a diaspora element, a diaspora that somehow believes, and some of that diaspora, by the way, is funded by illicit funds. But they do believe that by putting money into this thing, they are fighting back. But actually what they are doing is disabling law enforcement. And so you'll see that across the Southeast, most of the area commands were taken, most of the major area commands were taken out during NSAS. Now, a lot of the people who did the taking out were liberated from the Owerri prisons. Almost certainly, the Owerri prison break had elements of involvement that a complicity of political actors in some parts of the Southeast. I don't want to go beyond that on this particular platform. And some of the operatives who did it came from nearby regions, from outside the Southeast. But you will see that there's been no major inquiry into the Owerri prison break, which led to the liberation of 1,844 convicts and detainees. Some of them are, many of them convicted among the convicts of the most serious crimes, many of them held for network and organized crime activities. And all of that, not an inquiry, no mechanism of accountability. And one more factoid, no prison officer, no law enforcement officer was killed or injured in the Owerri prison break. Just think about that. And so there are elements here that are beyond what we can really discuss on an open platform such as this. But you get the sense of where this is headed without too much effort. I'll yield.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Prof. We have a number of hands up. We'll get to you guys in a minute. Just two quick short questions. You spoke about the peculiarities of the crisis in the Southeast and how all of this is lost in the narrative of IPOB. What do you think is the interest at stake? And then secondly, I just received an invite asking me to join a meeting on economy, Southeast Governors Summit on Economy and Security. What do we know? Is there a sense in which we can say this is too little, too late? Thank you.
Let me start with that. This is the meeting supposedly scheduled in Imo State, I believe, for the 24th
August,
or thereabouts.
23rd, 24th.
24th, exactly, of August. Again, I want to watch what I say very carefully. But, and the meeting is convened supposedly in the name of the 5 governors of the Southeast. I do know for a fact, having spoken to some of the governors, that is not factually accurate. And most of the governors of the Southeast are not likely to be there because they've not been actually consulted in the design of the meeting or in its convening or in its scheduling. They've just been told that this meeting is being convened in Owerri. I'll not go beyond that here. But that obviously has implications. And this is precisely part of what I've alluded in response to the previous question. This, the political leadership needs to grow up in a different way. And when you're dealing with elected officials and elected governors in 5 different states, you've got to accord them some respect. You can't presume to convene a meeting in the name of governors whom you've not briefed, whom you've not taken into confidence, whom you've not involved. The Ebonyi State government has not nominated anybody to this coordinating committee. The Anambra State government has not. Enugu State government has not. All of the people who signed the invite have been appointed by one governor in the name of all the governors of the Southeast. It sounds like a tale from, Wakukombe, no man. In the folk tales that we used to hear when we were children, anything, everything and anything in the name of but this is really what it is at the moment, not what it appears to be. That's exactly what it is. I know that confidences have been exchanged amongst the governors that are full and frank about this way of doing things. Now, as I was saying in relation to your second question, Chido, representing this as IPOB means it is a military, it goes to the territorial integrity of Nigeria. And that means, therefore, it is more lucrative. And you see, for those of us who are listening to this, no theater of crisis in Nigeria has ever ended since the Nigerian Civil War and since the Tiv crisis and the Nigerian Civil War. None. And for those who have looked at it, the Niger Delta, the JTF was deployed 30 years ago. It is still there. The JTF in the Niger Delta was supposed to be a minimal insertion for a limited duration. Today, officers and men of our military, of our joint services are paying money to be deployed to the JTF in the Niger Delta. We have moved from anti-terror and counter-terror to counter-insurgency to 7th Division, MNJTF, JTF in the Northeast. That theater is bustling. Because people think now the biggest piece of real estate, the most lucrative piece of real estate in Nigeria, Banon, is in Maiduguri. It's not in Lagos or Abuja. If you want to make money from real estate, acquire one in Maiduguri. Now, because people will pay you 3 years in advance for the property. Right now, you can't get hotel rooms in Maiduguri. You can get in Abuja and Lagos. You can't get in Maiduguri. Representing this as IPOB and making every story of insecurity in the Southeast as IPOB is lucrative. I don't want to start saying it is lucrative for this person or that person. But, you know, as I speak to you, a particular governor in the Southeast has secured a 150 billion naira supplementary budget for security in his state. And I don't want to go into the details of what he's using it for. Security agents who are in some of these states are helping themselves to things, while some of their colleagues, by the way, are being killed in ways that no one should ever have to suffer. And many of their colleagues don't have the confidence to show up on the front lines. And so there is a political economy to this kind of insecurity that, you know, is important not to lose sight of. And I should just say very quickly, I see a question on the chat box about ungoverned spaces in the Southeast. It's difficult to talk about Southeast and ungoverned spaces in one sentence. When some of us, you know, many of us on this, OC, Chido, myself, when we were growing up, and we were and no one in India, and you know, you saw forests. And you know, you go to a lot of places now, see boys, you know, you to no fear, you know, Iga or Bossy, I think in the you to no fear. But where's the offer no Bossy? You know, there's no offer na Ogidi or any of those places. And why is that so? And I alluded, you know, in my chapeau to the demographic and land pressures and natural resource pressures in the Southeast. The Southeast is 29,358 or thereabout square meters in total, square kilometers in total. That is just a little over 500 square kilometers less than Kogi State. The Southeast is about the size of Oyo State. It's about the size of Southern Kaduna, right? Now, Anambra State is 4,888 or thereabout square kilometers and losing territory. Nanka has lost most of its land. Ndi Nanka these days are relocating to places like Oko and to other parts of OAU or Ajale, right? And it's not, Anambra is the one state in Nigeria that is losing territory. Lagos, which is about 3,777 square kilometers, is gaining territory, which is why you no longer have for instance, you no longer have Bar Beach. It's gone. It's now replaced by apartment blocks, very expensive ones at that. So now, so for someone to talk about, now I could even go further. Look, Abia State plus Anambra State does not add up to Borgu local government area in Niger State, which is about 11,567 square kilometers. Jere local government area in Bauchi State is about the size of Enugu State. One local government area. So now, if you're talking about ungoverned spaces in Niger State, I hear you. But there are no ungoverned spaces in the Southeast. Where at all. It does not exist. That has not been allocated. The biggest state in the Southeast is Enugu State, which is just about 7,000 square kilometers. And there is no, OC, you're from Enugu State. Tell me which part of Enugu State is not allocated. Now, and I get back to my point about the floodplains of Orasi River. And, you know, they give the floodplains to Ndibiarabia, Koji, Koede, Ko, Abu, na Hendozo. You know, so Ndimbarambara are usually the people you find them floodplains. Ndiwe Ane go back to Obuno, which is what we call it, the ancestral lands, or Imobi, where we, or Imezinolo. Those are the places where we settle. There were settlement patterns in our league. And so there are no ungoverned spaces here, at least not in the Igbo land that I know. And I like to think that I know Igbo land reasonably well. And certainly, when you talk about Imo West and Anambra South, I can claim that I have covered pretty much every blade of grass in that neighborhood on foot because my parents taught in most of those communities and I grew up in most of those communities. A lot of these kids are the children or neighbors of people whom I lived with or whom my parents taught or in whose communities my parents lived. So I know these neighborhoods. Nobody can talk about ungoverned spaces in those places.
Thanks, Prof. I think we'll now go to the audience. We'd like you to keep this as short as possible. Go straight to your questions or your comments in about a minute or so. But just to tell Prof that somebody has also asked about solutions to some, if not all, of these problems. So put that, pay attention to that when you're responding to some of the questions. We'll start with Rudolph Okonkwo, the famous Dr. Damages. Rudolph, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Chido. Prof, thank you so much for your presentation. It was amazing. Onwe ihe prophecy Femesia na-ekwu, ọ na-asị na ihe ndị ọzọ mere anyị erika, mana ihe anyị mere onwe anyị karịa. That is, for those who do not understand, what we did, Igbo people did to themselves is more than what others did to us. But each time we put anything about NMI, we always blame other people more than ourselves. Now, there's something I want you to help me understand. When did we become people who don't make up stories? We all these things you laid out, I'm so impressed and so amazed at how in depth, in a short time, you were able to touch on things that are not in public forum, even though you kept some things to yourself. But typical Igbo person, if you mention all these things about what's going on, we point at other people. We don't believe no way. We come up with stories that make us happy, that other people are the reason why we are the way we are, things are the way they are. And it's the fault of other people. And we are waiting for other people to solve the problem. Can you help us, or people who are listening? And I hope there will be another opportunity for you to have a longer time to discuss these things. Can you help me or help others to understand how did we get there to this place where we no longer accept responsibilities for what even did not contribute ego, not support some of these things, they don't want to believe that they have any role in what is going on. Thank you.
My brother, you have articulated it so well. I can't even try to. I can try to pass up on
much. So, Prof.
Hello.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I think Chido is timing in.
Do we take a cluster of questions and then respond to them?
I think that's what he wants to do, but he's timing in and out. So you could just answer while he comes back in. Yeah.
That's Chido.
Yeah, I think he's experiencing some connection.
Okay. I think we should take a couple of questions. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I'm in a location and my internet it's so yeah, I'm back. I'm saying we'll take a couple, like 3 questions. You respond to those questions. So we'll go to Uche Ugwaja. Uche Ugwaja, editor-in-chief of Ikengaonline. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof.
Uche, kindly unmute and ask your question or make your contribution.
Can you hear me? I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let me first thank Prof for the wonderful presentation. I mean, we expected this anyway. Let me also recognize that we have in our midst Josephine and Neni. Thank you, Ma, for yeah. And we have also the editor of Editors, Keke.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kolawole. We are glad that you joined us. Prof, I would love to ask Professor Soludo, another professor, governor in Anambra, when you were enumerating the garden varieties of atolls causing this mayhem in the southeast, I think Professor Soludo also added to his in his own list some what he called a new rising culture of idolatry in the southeast, which combines some form of cannibalism as well too. And you see that some native doctors are playing very critical role in this sector. Is it also possible that we have more than we can chew going on in the southeast? That's my question.
Thank you very much, Uche. Steve Oko is news editor of Ikengaonline. Steve, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. Good evening, sir. I must say that I'm very delighted to listen to you. I'm one of your secret fans, honestly. Prof, I think I tend to somehow disagree with your submission that the release of Nnamdi Kanu may not, of course, arrest the insecurity in the Southeast. But this is the general belief down here that if Nnamdi Kanu is released from detention today, he will be able to rein in some of his followers who are involved in this insecurity. And then it will also be very much easy to sort out the criminals from the real agitators. So, and secondly, my other question is, how do you look at the use of force to compel people to disobey the so-called sit at home? Take, for instance, what happened yesterday in Enugu, where the governor went to Obete and sealed some shops of traders who stayed away during Monday sit at home. You know, just as part of effort not to obey the sit at home. I remember that a number of persons have been killed and others injured because they were trying to comply with government assurances and directives. And unfortunately, the same government didn't come to their aid when the enforcers of sit at home, you know, came hard on them. I had an experience of my close brother last year who was almost killed in Ebonyi State. The governor had assured them to go about their businesses, and these other guys came on them in the open market, destroyed a lot of property, and today nobody is asking after them. If you go to the hospitals, some people are still there lying because the government told them to go for business, and they went for their business and they got attacked and some killed. So finally, I want to really know what your take is in all this. Don't you think the release of Nnamdi Kanu to a large extent to bring to an end, perhaps, the surging insecurity? Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you, Steve. I think we have 2 more hands up. Let's quickly take those so that we know, even though we've there are a lot of questions, but let's have Jude Mwemena and then Chepkori Sambo. Quickly, please.
Yes, Ikenga, thank you for convening this discourse. Thank you, Prof, for opening it. When I started listening to you first, I was annoyed. I thought it would go like theoretical, the way we used to do. I'm Dr. Jude Mbemena from Ozobula Nabo. I'm a medical doctor that live and practice in my community. So when I tell you anything today, know that that thing is true because I'm experiencing it. So one of the, and I'm still equally a little close, not now. Before I used to be very close to Professor Charles Soludo, but now he's a governor. He doesn't get close to many people anymore. So what is important? You can see what I wrote in my question. How can you govern the people you don't know? You don't know their number. You don't know anything about, no statistics, no data. Even already we have Umunna. Our Umunna have registers. What we just need is to harness all those information to help us in identifying when a criminal walks into our area and how to tackle it. The other things, but I learned something so much from you this evening. Moderation. I talk very, very, very open, but moderation helped me. I learned a lot from you, sir. At the interval, when you want to overshoot, you can tell yourself. That's all of us. Thank you. And I advertise this meeting in almost all the social media platforms in the Southeast that I'm part of them. Almost since that day you advertised it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And lastly, we get Chepok Sambu for this first section of the question and answer.
Thank you for the insights you've shared. I'm not really well versed in this, but I have a question on, you talked about IPOB being used as an excuse for what is going on. are the residents aware that they're not dealing with IPOB here? And what I think I want to ask also is, what are the short-term solutions to combating organized crime? Because it's easier to plan for the long-term solutions than it is to plan for the short term. And then finally, with all this going on, who are the people organizing behind? Because can they rely on the government? Can they rely on IPOB? Who are they organizing behind for protection? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof, over to you, please.
Yes, these are some very powerful questions. I'm not going to take them in any particular order. Some of them are closely related. Chef Corey, thanks a lot for your question. Now, and some of these questions and some of the comments I've heard lead us in the direction of solutions, for instance, so-called. Again, with a caution here, there are some ideas I'll be unable to discuss on an open forum. But in terms of, I think a lot of people know, speaking about IPOB itself, IPOB in the places where they are active. And as I said, these are a lot of these are places I know very well. Now, I know a lot of the boys who have entered the bush in the name of IPOB. Some of them still call me and say, nah, hunger is killing us here. Can you arrange something for us? Send us something to eat. And, sometimes I ask, if you're dying of hunger in the bush, why don't you come out? Okay? And, we'll banter about it now and again. I'll ask somebody, okay, contact somebody, maybe they will have something for you. Because there are all manner of ways to do that. And they'll find them right or something. But at the end of the day, these are kids I knew growing up. And I still want to return a line to them. Now, when where people are attacked in their communities, they know, in many cases, they know if the actors are from within the community or not. In a lot of places. It is also true, as Rudolph said, that in a lot of places and communities that are going through stress invariably start from externalizing the challenges they've got. It's not just, it's everywhere in the world. Sierra Leoneans say that the only people who committed atrocities in Sierra Leone were Liberians. Liberians will tell you it was Libyans. Sudanese will tell you it is Uganda. Uganda will tell you it is Sudanese. Nobody actually ever admits, actually, we're doing this to ourselves. And quite often it is the same thing. But in a lot of these communities, you have a mix of internal actors and external actors. And we've, in the work that I'm doing now with the Truth, Justice, and Peace Commission, we've gone through quite a bit of this. We've actually served witness summonses on every community in Anambra State, on the Igwe and the President General and the youth leader. And we are taking them methodically. And many of them will start off saying, oh, it is people from outside. You then put them under pressure and they'll start telling you, actually, yes, it is a lot of, our people are involved. And some of the destruction, when you see the destruction and the targeting, you will know that this targeting is not possible unless there is internal collaboration. And the Igbos have a proverb for that it is the rat in the house that tells the rat outside that there is food in the basket, right? Now, that really is the point here, that we've got to accept that a lot of what is happening is by ourselves. And, we were told, oh, Fulani, 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 this, Fulani, that, Fulani, the other one. And nothing you told anyone could make them understand that this was the wrong path to thread. And then, in all the hearings that we've had in Anambra State, and so far we filled out 148 people and taking testimonies, over 50 sworn testimonies. And that's just the beginning. There's only one Fulani person that has shown up, and that's a dead Fulani who was killed in Umunze. Okay? Now, all the people being killed are Igbos. All the people killing are really Igbos too. And we've got to accept that. Now, I've had a series of meetings with Juju priests, with the traditional medicine people, and it's interesting that we're saying this in this week, that Akwakoko, the rather popular or famous or infamous exponent of this thing in Oba, has been collected, and the story now is that some Christian groups have been requested to pray for him. But even in the meetings, and my first meeting with the organized Ndidibia, na Anambra, and Nandi, it took over 5 hours, just trying to understand why they'd get into this. But a good part of the initial submission they made was, we are not the people who provide the amulets and charms that these people use, that they come from externals, that are Dibias from other parts or neighboring parts who provide them with these charms and amulets. And that but in the end, we persuaded them that we need to go into mutual organization. And maybe we need to now get into a situation where they are a guild recognized and registered, and their practice regulated, so that we understand and know who the ungazetted, undesignated actors are in this particular field of traditional medicine and traditional healing and all of that. And I think we are, we've had 2 subsequent meetings since then, and we are beginning to, I believe, develop a mutually intelligible language, even if there are still significant differences. Now, the point about Steve, I'm not quite sure I talked about Nnamdi. I didn't actually mention Nnamdi Kanu. I never mentioned him at all or his release. But I'm not totally afraid of engaging with that subject matter. I just want to clarify what I said, which was that I do not think that if you lanced IPOB and ESN from the landscape we have in the Southeast right now, you will necessarily then end all the major insecurity crises we have in the region. And that's partly because IPOB and ESN is no longer an institution, it's a franchise. People use it to commit all kinds of atrocities. The people who tell you that they are enforcing sit at home, most of them are not doing that. Many of them are members of cults. When you look at their get-up, their language, the things they do, the things they say, you know that these are cult kids, right? And in a lot of the communities that we are dealing with people who are in cults. They are not controlled by the command and control structure of IPOB at all. And the command and control structure of IPOB will not be able to control these people. I am not here to say release Nnamdi Kanu or don't release him. I'm also not going to tell you that if you release Nnamdi Kanu today, all the problems in this situation will be solved. First of all, Nnamdi Kanu is from Abia State. Okay? There is actually the crisis you have in Abia State, which is in Abia South, parts of Okwa, are related to natural resources to begin with. Nnamdi Kanu does not command any forces in Imo West. He does not control troops in Anambra South. And he's not going to tell the people, Odumodu, who was killed in Osumogu, for instance, Odumodu came from Ihitenansa. Okay? Odumodu was a trader in Oroyi, near Idumota in Lagos, who didn't make good and who decided to up and go home and become a criminal. Nnamdi Kanu does not speak to him because Nnamdi Kanu's worldview, supposedly, to the extent I can glean anything, assuming I can, is ideological. These people don't have any ideological dispositions. These are criminals. This is crime, pure and simple. Now, will Nnamdi Kanu demobilize those criminals? No. Is Nnamdi Kanu going to solve the ego and the problem in Obosi and the gun running and the cults and the cults in Oka? No. Is he going to stop Aguleri, Umuleri, Anam, Amanuke? I'm fairly brutal about this. Now, that's not to say Nnamdi Kanu should not be released or that he should be released. No. But I want to be very clear. The idea somehow that Nnamdi Kanu will wake up, raise his hands, and everybody will look, and he'll perform some magic is nonsensical, utterly nonsensical. And I'm not going to yield any ground on this one. The thing I have seen is more dangerous. It is more organized. Now, would Nnamdi Kanu have stopped Ozubulu massacre? Of course not. Ozubulu massacre was sophisticated crime and payback. And all these oversimplifications by sophisticated people should stop. We need to reason through our challenges brutally and tell ourselves home truths. And the home truths will not be very nice when we tell them to ourselves. Look, I know politicians who bought guns to win elections. Some of them, people I went to school with. Not one, not two, 30, 40 AK-47s, brought them to the communities, won elections, and have not been able to retrieve the guns. The guns are killing our people. Didn't Nnamdi Kanu tell them? No. So let us not oversimplify this Nnamdi Kanu phenomenon. No. This is how Ralph Wazirike was. Well, Ralph Wazirike has reigned and gone. Nnamdi Kanu will reign and go. But our problems are deep, and I would suggest we try and understand them. And so, Uche, in that light, I hope I've tried to address your point about idolatry and Ogu. And, you know, the Ndibia. I'm actually engaging actively with Ndibia right now. But, you know, my view is, I don't believe in the things, the juju they produce, so, you know, and Odeshi and all of that. But the fact that psychologically, it puts these young people in a position of irresponsibility where they think that they are impregnable needs to be addressed, because that also helps with the kind of nonsense that we see, the irresponsible killing that we are seeing. But the attributions, again, you know, people have been killed, and I want to be responsible in how I manage, how we manage the narratives. But there have been some major killings that have been attributed to I manage how we manage the narratives. But there have been some major killings that have been attributed to. If you know the landscape in the places, you know those are not the case, and you know who has it. If you know the landscape, a lot of our security services do not have that granular knowledge of a lot of the neighborhoods. And therefore, once this thing happens, it's IPOB, ESN, which is not the case. Part of what I'm hoping that our work from the Truth, Justice, and Peace Commission will do is to just provide a mapping of the cults and their deployment. The political geography of just cults alone will spook you out in the Southeast. And these cults will kill Nnamdi Kanu if Nnamdi Kanu came to tell them to stop. Let me stop here.
Thank you very much, Prof. We can't even begin to imagine the depth of the crisis we face. Any more questions? I don't see any hands up. Anybody would like to comment or respond to? I know there have been a lot of questions and comments on the chat box. Prof, you can also take a look at that and see. All right, we have Jude Eze. Jude Eze and then Osita Sogwa.
So, thank you very much, Prof. Thanks for the exposition and thanks to the organizers. Mine is just a question that has been asked before, because looking at the complexity of the problems that you've mentioned is actually quite scary. And I must say that you must be very strong and courageous to be in the midst of these issues and trying to have a solution with. And it's more like dragging us back to the questions that have been asked on the forum. And that is there any solution to this problem? Is there anything that we can do to start talking about ameliorating them rather than just kind of listing them one after the other? Because that's not going to help our psyche after this discourse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rudolph, is this a fresh hand?
Yes, please.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, Prof. One thing that hasn't been mentioned now, but Simon Ekpa and his advocacy and what he's trying to do. So this is my fear. In my hometown from Nobi, and just like Nobi has mobilized. So you find young people that have been given arms to protect Nobi from enemies, any kind of enemy, whichever group. And it's spreading across Idemili South.
Right.
Every time it's arming their own people, whatever group, whether it's IPOB, whether it's like Abbas, whether it's and these people that are being armed, most of them are the same people from where the other people recruited. You're talking about people who probably went to business and failed, people who went to learn a skill and didn't do well. They are being armed. I don't know any plan to retrieve the arm eventually from them. I don't know how some towns are contributing money to pay them, sustain them, because the government is not paying them. I don't know what will happen when the money runs out. So there are new problems that have been created in trying to find solution to this problem. I want you to maybe address that in as you answer the next series of questions, because Simon just said that all the senators are not going to come back to the Eastern senators who went to vote in the National Assembly recently, I think yesterday. So we are finding ourselves in that situation where if anything happens to any senator now, even if it's not Simon and his group, political enemies can take out. There are so many things going on that is unbelievable in my looking at it from here. Looking at it from
Thank you very much, Rudolph. Osita, please, and then Uche will go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Odinkalu, for this mind-blowing submission and giving us also insight into what is happening in the Southeast and what the problem is. I've actually got another dimension to understanding this situation, and I'm happy you were able to trace the situation to its fundamentals. It was starting from with the Bakassi. That is the issue of the place of the non-state actors, beginning from the outskirts of Bakassi, just like I think Mr. Okonkwo just talked about now, those who are hailing people who are now acting as security men in our different communities. That is very nice. And I also would like to think that that led to this is also a lack of leadership, which we hinted at, and a lack of leadership in the Southeast. I may be wrong, but I would like to think, and I'm convinced personally about it, that in the last 8 years, we have had the worst of leaders, the worst of governors in the Southeast. The last 8 years was a mess. Governors who could not stand up to what they vowed, governors who could not do anything. And I think it was this situation that gave this non-state actors the leveling ground, so that when this IPOB rose, the people were hearing them. It was this particular thing that, when there is a lacuna in leadership, something must, because nature abhors vacuum, something must take its place. And then it was this particular thing that came in. This lack of leadership and also the poverty among the people gave this particular background to the non-state actors. And then I would also like to look at the role played by the diaspora. It's instructive. I stay in Europe, and you engage people, you engage Nigerians. In short, one man nearly slapped me because I was telling him that this morning you people are contributing 5 euros, 30 euros for the so-called march in Nnamdi Kanu that Biafra we are going to buy weapons. And I told this man, this is not going to help. That was long time ago. He nearly slapped me. And then this is the mess we are seeing ourselves. So I like also to put into account the role played by the diaspora and still being played by those in the diaspora in this mess that Southeast has become. And I would like to now ask, just as there's a lady that spoke, what is this solution?
Thank you very much.
Where did it begin?
Thank you. Yeah, Uche, can we take your... We'll just have about 10 minutes to the end of the program. Yeah.
Mine also is on political leadership. Political leadership. Prof, please, it would seem as if that the political leaders in the Southeast are enjoying what is happening, because you in the past 5-6 years, you can hardly see any attempt they have made in trying to resolve this issue, either by way of a meeting, workshop, or the only one we had is the one that held some time in Abuja, and the only place they had the confidence to even meet was in Abuja, outside the South. So is it possible to reason that the Southeast political elite are benefiting from this crisis?
Thank you very much, Prof. Okay, we have our friends. I saw a number of people. I think Uche, you recognize them. Kayode Komalaf, the deputy MD of this day group, Inyom, Josephine. You are all welcome. Kayode Komalaf, please go ahead. Yes.
KK, my oga. Hello.
Thank you. Chukwu.
All right, Uncle K, please go ahead. KK, you can unmute and speak.
KK, bless your voice. So
It's sounded.
Maybe we just keep going till he comes back.
So keep going, please. Yeah, so
really?
Prof, I said we have little under 10 minutes to, understand all of this. And maybe if somebody had raised the question in the chat room about Nnamdi Kanu's state of health. If not on his state of health, what do we know about, about him? What are you hearing, and what are some of the things you can share on this platform about him? Thank you.
That will be difficult, because whatever I say now, somebody will say I have said. You never know where it's going to get to. All I can say is I speak fairly regularly with his lawyers. I'm in fairly close contact with Nnamdi Kanu's lawyers, who visit him, and there are concerns, but I think they're also pursuing mechanisms for trying to address those concerns. But much of the questions have focused on the issue of solutions. Now, first of all, I am not too much into this Nigerian thing of you must proffer solutions. As I like to say, the radiologist does not give prescriptions, but nevertheless serves a purpose if they're able to provide good enough diagnosis. So I don't want to suggest that we should pressure ourselves into artificialities in the name of solutions. That said, I think at the moment, the biggest problem we've got is that there's a narrative challenge we've got to address, which is in many ways, and I don't want to be misquoted, but in many ways, the IPOB ESN problem in a form is the easiest of all of the Southeast security problems to solve. You can actually see ways and means to address that and offer a deal and put with a combination of tactical pressure on the exponents. The geographical territory is actually finite, and there's a way you can address it with contemporaneous cross-border assets and pressure and political leadership, and you can actually very substantially address it if you also have decent political leadership. All the other elements cannot be so easily addressed or vanquished. And there are lots of them. And we do need to keep the tactical options on the table, because the people who are doing this and who have the guns need to be under pressure. That I'm not going to remove off the table. And I'm not going to tell you I'm a peacenik and you don't need tactical pressure. No. However, where I have problems is reducing all of this to kinetics and tactical issues. No.
Sorry, Prof.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. KK is on now. In case he has any question, you will just finally.
Okay.
Please unmute and go ahead, KK. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Shido. I'm sorry, I had a little problem on meeting myself. That was it. Yes, just quickly, and first to commend the Ikenga for this sort of effort. I think is very helpful. And just taking off from the last note, Professor Odinkalu, that it's not that defining the problem itself is a very important task. even when you have not got to the point of making a prescription. So, but just to amplify 2 points, that the crisis in the Southeast, that is a Nigerian problem. Therefore, in our analysis, when we are looking at it, we must situate it within the general Nigerian crisis. And that is without denying the specificity of the Southeast crisis. That is a specific one, but it's the Nigerian problem. Therefore, even if you are going to have a solution, it has to be within that context. For instance, if you are sketching the solution, there is a task for the Nigerian state. Because if you look at the security dimension, that definitely is a task for the Nigerian state. Then, of course, there are other segments, that will also have their own task to perform. In the Southeast, particular, like earlier speakers have said, I think the elite, and in this case, I say more than the politicians. That's when I use the elite, not just the political elite, but the elite, particularly, they also have a role to play. Because underlying this point is that, like it has happened in other parts of the country, at a point in the crisis, it's got that the elite, surrender leadership to the mob. They agree for whatever, maybe out of frustration or what out of opportunism, surrender the leadership, in at various levels to the mob. And now we're having the consequences. And finally, that whatever problem, whatever solution that we're going to find out in our reflection, we have to know that definitively we will not be able to solve this problem unless we put it within the general crisis of the Nigerian political economy. That all the various dimensions which the speaker, the guest speaker, has scheduled about it, unless you have it. Because for instance, in the Southeast, unless you solve the environmental problem of erosion, that yes, we have a very relatively small landmass, but even that is eaten away by erosion. So people do not even have the land to see. So if you don't put it within that broad context of the crisis of the Nigerian political economy, then the solution might not be definitive. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm sorry for coming so late. Yeah.
Thank you very much, KK, for that. Back to you, Prof.
No, absolutely. And I think this is part of where I started from. Thanks a lot, KK. As I was saying, where we started off was partly the demographic and political geography of the Southeast, and just the land hunger problem and the erosion problem, but also political leadership, because that is the meta framework that within which all of this is unfolding. But I also spoke about the cross-territorial trade in small arms and light weapons, in drugs and in militias, which have fed the crisis in the Southeast. And it is not possible to have a Robinson Crusoe solution to this situation. And part of that, take the point Rudolph makes about the militias, and there are 3 categories of militias now. There are statutory militias, and so you've got statutory vigilantes like the AVG, the Anambra Vigilante Group. That is statutory. Many of them are regulated, trained, and there is a command and control structure. There are community vigilantes. Pretty much every community now arms a bunch of young people or people under what they call a CSO in a lot of communities, and they are providing security services. They are doing security provisioning. They are not necessarily under the command of the statutory vigilantes. So sometimes they are used for irregular activities. Then you've got informal vigilantes. All of these exist, and all of them are armed. And nobody is actually figuring out how all of these should interface. Now, so part of the challenge is, how do you preclude this from becoming precisely what Rudolph has predicted, the next site of problem? And for that, we do need training, we do need doctrine, we do need enumeration, and we do need command and control of these people. The problem here, of course, is related to the larger Nigerian security provisioning problem, which is a centralized police force. Now, communities are dealing with realities in relation to which they are patenting their own solutions. How do we do this? We've already opened up some dialogue with entities I don't want to name here, but that does not, they are not the entities some of you will think about, to begin to address that. at different levels in ways that it will enable us to achieve integration, frameworks of coordination, and frameworks of training and doctrine to give some frameworks for beginning to register these, document them, enumerate them, and regulate them. Because this is exactly where the point Rudolph makes is absolutely spot on. This is where we are headed indeed. So there is that. Now, we've also got, in a lot of places, people are missing. They're totally unaccounted for. And in my view, Igbo people, of all people in Nigeria, should have an interest in accounting for everyone, because there is hardly any Igbo family that does not have someone missing from the Civil War. And yet, in this crisis, lots of people are missing. So today in Anambra, quite literally today, the governor signed the executive order establishing and inaugurating the Bureau of Missing Persons. We have inaugurated them today in the chambers conference room of the Attorney General, and we're beginning to skill them up, establish frameworks for collecting information of everybody missing and establishing a framework of assistance. You have one person missing and is a man, and the family is put out, the wife, the children, and so we also visit immiseration on those whom we should be supporting. So this is an opportunity for government to show it cares, for our elites, for our political institutions to show they care. And when you do that, you begin to win some empathy and kudos for the state in ways that we don't have at the moment. There are complementary non-kinetic frameworks that we're also contemplating, some of which I don't want to deal with here. But one thing has been mentioned, civic registration. I think it was Dr. Mbemina that mentioned civic registration. That is under consideration, and rollout is being contemplated in at least Anambra, and I think Enugu is interested in that as well. And so civic registration is likely to be rolled out. But in doing that, we also want to make sure that discrimination is avoided. So you don't create the impression that you're registering only people who are indigents, and therefore so-called settlers or people who are not Igbos begin to feel left out of. So you want to do it in an inclusive framework, and that's what's exercising us in this and making us to think we need to take time to roll it out. Now, one more point. I think it was Steve who talked about what's happened in Enugu with the sealing up of the shops. I think that is misguided, and I've said so publicly. Traders will not be closing their shops if they were secure. No trader wants to not trade. And I also know at the moment that there are other governors in the Southeast who are exploring other less challenging ways, less misguided ways of dealing with this at the moment. And those governors, in some of the conversations I'm having, I'm encouraging those governors to also explore talking with the governor in Enugu. I know for a fact that today, this morning, the governor in Enugu met with Ohanese youths, and I think the conversations have been complimentary and constructive, and I suspect that you're going to see a change in the approach of Enugu state government to dealing with this. But that's to say that we are actually exercising ourselves about how to address this. And for many of us, those of us in our late 40s or 50s and beyond, this is our challenge. It's as simple as that. And all of us who are answering Dr. This and Professor that, we're now part of the leadership. Whether or not we've won an election is not the issue. And when KK frames this as a role for the elites in finding solutions, I totally buy into that. Nobody should feel this is a problem that is for other people to sort out, for a Soludo or for Ropos or Dimma or for Gobonoti. This is our problem. A problem for Igbo elites, for Nigerian elites, for Igbos, and for Nigerians to figure out how to solve it. It's also an intergenerational problem. Young people are fighting older people whom they believe have not made the goods of organized society available to them. And so at the generational level, I want to suggest also that this engages all of us. But ultimately, we've got to understand the diagnostic challenge, because without it, we cannot make any headway. Let me yield and stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. We couldn't have asked for a better keynote speaker on this issue. We hope you'll come back when there are more results from some of your engagements in the Southeast. We've come to the end of another wonderful edition of the monthly town hall meeting, I would yield the space to my co-moderator, Dr. Osman Agbo, to take us home. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chido. Thank you, Prof. Chido, you basically, I joined you to thank Prof for the wonderful work that he has done. I mean, there's nobody under any illusion that, you know, our problem is, as our security challenges is as simple as ABC. But Prof basically laid it down very, very clearly, that to the point that we are starting to understand the complexity of the whole situation. I think a problem that you understand is how soft, because if you don't even understand what you're fighting, then how are you going to engage in the fight? So thank you so much, Prof, for this wonderful work you've done. But my take home here, one of my take home here is that, you know, the way we will begin to even start to address this problem has to do with leadership. At the end of the day, leadership is at the front and center of everything, because when you don't have leadership, then, you know, nothing, you can't even articulate the problem, let alone how to solve it. One of the problems in my opinion, is the what I call retail, the retail approach to security, which is the fact that all the states have their own way of doing things. Anambra have their own, Imo have their own, and, you know, it goes like that. And instead of coming together and seeing it as a collective challenge and solving it collectively, we're all going different ways trying to find a solution. I don't think that's the way to go. So with the connection you have of being able to at least have some listening ears to this governor, at least we continue drumming it into their ears that we need to come together to solve this problem. We're talking about leadership. This brings us to our next town hall, which will be next month. We will have no other person less than Chief Emmanuel Iwanyang, who is the current President General of Ohanese. The topic has to do with the challenges and the options. Because again, when the governors have gone a wool, then if we're able to have a strong Ohanese that is a little bit of independent, maybe they might even, you know, help us begin to, untie some of these knots. So, but on that note, I say thank you to everyone who joined us in this particular edition. And, our work is all cut out for us. Everybody, it's not the issue of security is not about them, the elite. So we all have a role to play, and one role to play is all of us thinking about ways we will contribute our own part to, finding the solutions. Because at the end of the day, if we fail, we all fail collectively. If we make our homeland such that things will start to change all for us and our future generations to benefit. Thank you very much, and may God bless.
God bless you.
Thank you very much, everyone. See you all next month for another interesting edition of the monthly Kinga edition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everyone for coming. Thank you. Good night, sir. Oga Chido.